It happened an age ago. But when I recall, I see it true. On a night of wintry fog, the rune of death was stolen. And the demigods began to fall. Starting with Godwyn the Golden. Queen Marika was driven to the brink. The shattering ensued, a war that wrought only darkness. The Elden Ring was broken. But by whom? And why?
In my opinion, the mystery of the Night of Black Knives is still unsolved. I will attempt a solution that doesn't rely on cut content, foreign language translations, or marketing material, as the wildest theory that I'll put forward in this video is that we don't need them, and spoilers. With that, let us speak of the past a while. Chelona's Rise and the Night of Black Knives. High in the Moonrise altar, tucked behind a small grove and surrounded by turtles, is Chelona's Rise, the tower of one of the most mysterious Carian nobles in Elden Ring. Even the Snow Witch Renna has a few mentions. Of Chelona, we only have a puzzle, a tower, and a spell. So who is Chelona, and why is her rise locked with spirit turtles? What if I told you that identifying this Carian noble could not only reveal the identity of Ranni's secret mentor, but shed light on Marika's, Godwyn's, Ranni's, Fia's, and Rykard's motivation during the Night of Black Knives? Exploring the Rise. Chelona's Rise is swirling with snow and bathed in starlight. Turtles graze around a shaded entrance, one that's locked by spirit turtles. The turtles are a symbol for women. From Kaulia, Aphrodite, standing on her turtle, and the Earth Mother Spirit Kea, several myths and statues link turtles, wisdom, and the feminine. According to actalakota.org, Kea is a sacred spirit that represents the Earth Mother, the guardian of life, longevity, and fortitude. Longevity. Fortitude. They even make turtle shell amulets to symbolize a long life. Stamina. If the turtles scattered across the Carian plateau represent women, then they must be Carian women, and their locations are key to understanding the deeper story behind Chelona, Renna, and what really happened on the Night of Black Knives. The Lunar Turtle. We find the first turtle just outside the lunar estate, down on a cliff overlooking the ocean. This place is interesting because of the name, Lunar. While the name may relate to the Moonrise altar, the Carians didn't identify with the moon until Queen Renala. And since the cerulean medallion may be another reference to the queen and her amber-covered rune, I believe this was Renala's estate. But this isn't her turtle. It's her daughter's. A young Ranni would have played here, brought along whenever her mother visited the church of Manasellus. Considering the turtle is down on a lower ledge, if this space was used by the queen, there would be stairs, a patio, or some remnant of either. We follow the turtle down a stone step to the kind of secluded place a child might play. Maybe she played alone, or with Blythe, but the turtle is looking directly at Chelona's Rise. From the turtle, a snowy grove separates us from the rise. I imagine Ranni making her way through these trees, careful not to rile the wolves. Chelona's turtle. The next turtle clings to the cliff behind Chelona's Rise, as if it's hiding. One might say the tower itself is hiding, as it's locked behind Ranni's quest, hidden behind a forest. This turtle could be Chelona herself. Notice that we found the turtle by following the direction that Ranni's turtle was facing. Chelona's turtle is facing up, and guess where we find the last one? Ringleader's turtle. Just southeast of the Ringleader's Everjail, the last turtle can be seen high against a backdrop of stars. Ringleader. Stars. The jail contains Alecto, the ringleader of the Black Knives. Upon defeat, she drops her daughter's ashes, that read, Black Knife Tish Ashes. She was the daughter of the Black Knife ringleader, Alecto. Could this turtle be a stand-in for Alecto? Maybe. Through her connection to the Eternal Cities, we get some connection to the stars, but while Alecto is the ringleader of the Black Knives, I don't believe she was the ringleader of the entire night. a conspiracy involving powerful figures like Marika and Rykard. There are much stronger clues that this turtle may symbolize Renna, Renala's older sister and Ranni's secret Ice Witch mentor. Renna, Renala's sister. Ranni had a secret mentor who she modeled her body after, which is why she looks like this. As far as the identity of the Snow Witch, that was solved by the alchemist. In his video, The Three Sisters Mystery Finally Explained, link in description. In his amazing essay, the alchemist explains the triple goddess, a neo-pagan concept connecting the moon with what it describes as the three phases of womanhood: R'hllana the maiden, Renala the mother, and Renna the crone. I'll cover aspects of that theory here and add additional supporting evidence. The heretical. Ranni's Snow Witch hat connects her mentor to heresy, and thus the heretical rise. Up in the snowy peaks we find another locked tower, with a hidden path around back, one someone created while breaking in. Look at the balcony. Whoever made this path broke the banister inwards. Could Renna have been a burglar? Probably a prisoner. Inside we find this, the founding reign of stars. The eldest primeval sorcery, said to have been discovered by an ancient astrologer, a sorcery of legendary status. Primeval, ancient. This place speaks of the beginning. Nearby are the Stargazer's ruins. An alchemist uses the heirloom of the same name to connect this place to Renala, Renna's younger sister. I'll back this up using the jellyfish quest. While exploring the Stargazer's ruins, we find Arielette, a spirit jelly that is waiting for her sister, suggesting these jellyfish symbolize Renna and Renala. Since Arielette is waiting at the Stargazer ruins, this suggests she is the Stargazer, Queen Renala, and the heretical rise connects Renna to the founding stars, which means the Stargazer was looking for her older sister. Also, their hats are the same. More clues can be found in their names, or more specifically, at the end. It's been noticed that the name Aurelia relates to a type of moon-like jellyfish. Arielette is almost the same, but it ends in "-et", a suffix used to feminize names, create a diminutive or more affectionate version, or a female counterpart. Diminutive, female counterpart? Arielette is the little sister. But is Renna really Renala's older sister? If Renna is elderly, then why not a mother? Wouldn't it be more consistent with the triple goddess? Daughter, mother, grandmother? The alchemist has already pointed out that with the benefit of the DLC, we have Renna, Renala, and R'hllana. These are the three sisters. In addition, the altitude of the towers hints at it as well. Renna's rise sits on the highest cliff, then Renala, then Celivis's rise, which he appropriated after R'hllana's disappearance. Theories that rely on Renna as the mother are consistent with naming conventions, but must explain why the three sisters is really the mother and two sisters. But for now, let's take a short break and talk about the Zamore and their connection to Renna. Renna's Zamore connection. Remember the break-in? I think Renna learned the cold from a Zamore, a young ice boy, her Romeo. Ariette's dialogue suggests that Renna disappeared at 13 years old. Ariette tells her sister that, when we turned 14, we'd go see the stars. Renna disappeared when she was barely a teenager, the same age as Juliet when she died, and as Renala's sister, Renna was an astrologer. For her to need to escape or be rescued from this place means her captors must have been astrologers too, their parents. Consider that if Renala's astrologer parents even had a rise, it would have had to have been this one. A 13-year-old heretic, locked away by her parents. Really? At 13, were her parents' hearts so frozen that they couldn't let go of their disdain for their older daughter's ice magic? Renala's lunar sorcery was new and celebrated. Renna's ice magic wasn't. She may have been locked away for it, but locked away for using magic related to her own surroundings, snow and ice? Renna's astrologer parents may have associated ice with the Zamore, a possible combination of the wildlings and the others from Game of Thrones. The Zamore and the astrologers, two Newman sides, separated by a gulf of time. Look at how Renala and the Zamore both float on the air. Renna would have floated the same way. The Zamore mask reads, "Mask worn by knights of Zamore, hailed as heroes in the war against the giants. These long-lived warriors." Long-lived? We remember that the Newmen are descendants of denizens from another world. They are long-lived but seldom born. Long-lost Newmen, who weathered the storm and survived in the wild, separated when the rest of their kin lost their night sky, an offshoot of the people that became the Carians. This could be why Renna blended so harmoniously with them, why the Newman blade of calling and the Zamore sword are both curved, why they move the same. Also, House of Names tells us that The surname Zamore comes from the name of the city and province of Zamora, which is located on the Duero in northwest Spain. A group of Zamore who take their name from their home city, just like their Elden counterparts. Zamore Ice Storm, ice sorcery of the town of Zamore. Strike the ground with a staff to create a freezing tornado. Charging enhances potency. Cloaked in icy tempests, the Knights of Zamore have challenged the fire giants since ancient times. Zamore, Zamora, and would you look at their crest? Remind you of anything? Looks like the Carian Knight said to me. How romantic would it be if Renna was struck grounded for her love of a Zamore knight? A freed captive her parents saw as wild, lesser, but shared an ancient line. Remember that the one who used cold magic came in from outside. Only a Zamore could have used cold to help her escape. This motivation seems more human than just, my parents don't like it when I use blue at Friday Night Magic. It makes more sense when we look at the real person also named Zamore, christened Louis Benoit, a youth who was taken to work for the British for a non-negotiable wage of nothing. Zamore turned on his trafficker, reporting her to the French Revolution. Wikipedia tells us that records of the period suggest that Zamore was extremely mischievous as a child. Madame du Barry noted in her memoirs, the second object of my regard was Zamore, a young African boy, full of intelligence and mischief, simple and independent in his nature, yet wild. Zamore fancied himself the equal of all he met, scarcely deigning to acknowledge the king himself as his superior. Good for him. Many have noticed the chains. Broken. They're free now, but chains require captors. As enemies of the fire giants, the Zamore were likely owned by them and their troll overseers, practitioners of a repellent working ritual and punished by the briars of sin. Like the Hornsent, the fire giants oppressed Newman, earning them VIP placement on Marika's hit list. Remember that plucky Zamore was mischievous, intelligent. As neighbors of the fire giants, Renna's parents probably didn't agree, but this Zamore warrior may not have seen himself as lesser to anyone, just the sort that would have stolen a young Renna's heart, both of them valuing freedom above all. And speaking of captives, astrologer parents concerned with the development of their daughter might consider confinement preferable to heretical corruption, but this Zamore would be her Romeo, coming to her from under her balcony, breaking in to save his love. She may have held them as they fled, Renna trusting that he wouldn't let her fall. I think I'll be reminded of this every time I see a Zamore make a frozen floor. And if you need even more than that, look at Renna's cloak. She's wrapped in the hair of a Zamore knight. Marika is frequently demonized for her foul treatment of the trolls, but consider that if the trolls turned on the fire giants, then they must have been accomplices in the forced labor at some point. Marika's punishment of them, although cruel, looks a bit more appropriate. Points Marika. This could be why the Carians tolerate trolls. Considering their relationship with the Albinurics, the Carians may have seen nothing wrong with what the giants or the trolls were doing. According to the internet, at least some of the real Zamore family have moved from Spain. A migration. Like the real Zamore, our icy Newman migrated to a new world, being seen as far south as the Weeping Peninsula, which might be why Renna ended up in southern Liurnia. Maybe, but I don't think she got that far. Make ready to produce eye water when we turn back to the real-life Zamore. After spending a few years as a teacher, he died in poverty in 1820 and was buried in Paris. As wild runaways, Renna and young Zamore would have had few resources, being around the age of 13. They were both intelligent, and may have acted as teachers among the wildlings, but I think this means that Renna didn't actually live long enough to be an old woman, dying in poverty with her hero of the cold. The third turtle, Renna, the ringleader. Okay, so the snow crone is Ranni's aunt, but she's dead. How can she be the ringleader over Marika or Ranni?
Why not just kill them? I'll do it. I'll run up to Paris, bam, 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 bam. I'm back before week's end. How is this a bad plan?
You might be thinking that the item description of Ranni's dark moon makes Renala a stronger contender, but remember her moon is cold, and there are other subtle clues that point stronger to Renna. Firstly, remember that Renala is the stargazer, and Renna is the stars. The fact that this turtle can be seen against a backdrop of stars might be a clue. Also, Ranni's Snow Witch hat suggests the crone was nearby. It's been suggested that Ranni met the crone somewhere out in the Liurnian woods, but the crone is dressed for the cold. Look, it's snowing. Couldn't these be the woods from the item description? Considering 3 white wolves are found here, since wolves are often associated with Empyreans, Renala can't be the ringleader of anything, because she wasn't involved in the plot. I have more to support Renala's ignorance, but for now, who locked up Alecto? This is Renala's queendom. If she was in on the plot, why isn't Alecto free? You may be saying, but Renna can't be the ringleader. Isn't Marika behind the knife powder treason and plot? Marika's coming up, but for now, despite being dead, Renna is our third turtle. In summary, the spirit turtles that locked Chelona's rise each symbolize their own woman of Caria, Ranni, Chelona, and Renna. Destroy the turtles, and the door opens. Inside Chelona's rise. This is where things start to get really interesting, but for now they look mundane, and from the back window we get a legendary view of the maiden moon. Interestingly, a Redditor under the name Deleted discovered that if you point the character at the moon, the reticle lines right up with Ranni's rise. Brilliant! Which means that as we look up at the moon, we are looking up at Ranni's rise. As a Carian princess, maybe Chelona looked up to Ranni, if only in rank, but if the altitudes of the rises also suggest age, in the way they are consistent with Renala's and her sisters, then Chelona may have also been younger than Ranni. And from this other window, the reticle points at the Church of Vows. Pointing, but the rise itself is almost as far from it as it could be. From the secluded locale, I get hermit vibes. But for a hermit, why are there so many chairs? We continue up the elevator, and Ranni's dark moon is found at the top, introduced to Ranni by her mother. But separately, the snow crone taught her to fear the dark moon, evidenced by the multiple cold sorceries mentioning. The snowy crone taught the young Ranni to fear the dark moon, as she imparted her cold sorcery. If Renna was Renala's sister, why did she teach Ranni to fear the moon? Especially when her mother uses her own moon as a source of great power. Was this some form of manipulation? What even is a dark moon? I'm convinced by theories stating the moon is a symbol for womanhood. Many legendary Redditors and lore tubers have already connected the Carian moons with the triple goddess, Maiden Mother and Crone, a concept written about by a grammarian named Servius, the guy who drew this. A drawing of the phases of womanhood represented by 3 moons, with the moon on the far left depicting the new moon. And if we go back to Chelona's back balcony, the one that faces towards Ranni, NorthernNailPolish.com sums it up with a section called Winter, New Moon, Menstruation. I would read it, but you get the point. Even though this moon points towards Ranni, I don't think we should conflate the maiden moon and Ranni's dark moon. They're different. A new moon, astronomically speaking, occurs when the moon is between the sun and the earth, meaning that from the earth, the moon would look completely dark, leaden. Considering that the maiden has a small sliver of light, and Ranni's is completely dark, that means Ranni was not yet a maiden, maybe even a child. Why did her aunt tell her to fear her moon? Her coming womanhood. Elders often instill fear as a means to keep us safe. Renna may have wanted Ranni to fear growing up, because there are legitimate reasons for girls to fear the institution of womanhood, specifically related to the control a given order may place on her body. But stay with me to the end. As far as the timeline is concerned, Renna must have been a mentor to Ranni when she was very young. While her mother was instructing her how to enter adulthood, Renna was undercutting her younger sister with cold heresy, a source of wild wisdom who might have instilled that Ranni would have to think outside the orthodoxy as an act of self-preservation. To resist womanhood? Or something that would occur when Ranni became a woman, like a marriage. But there's more evidence for Renna being active in a child Ranni's life. Igi's frozen needle. How do I know Igigi gave this to a young Ranni? The blade shoots out of the sword like a Nerf gun, something a kid would have thought was cool as hell. But how did Igi know to give Arya a frozen blade, instead of a lunar or starry variant? It's because little Ranni Stark was already experimenting with ice at a young age. In secret, away from her mother, where only those with access to her innermost life could know. Why else hide the needle in the King's Realm ruins, not Caria Manor? Even if it was never gifted, it tells a story. Both Arya Stark and Ranni are given needles against their parents' wishes, gifts forged for them by male mentors, who see more of who they are than their establishment mothers. Mothers who are impatient for their daughters to grow up. Needle, in this case, a frozen needle, is a symbol of staying young. Plus, the Peter Pan syndrome describes those who resist adulthood, and George R.R. Martin might have seen images of Peter Pan using a rapier. So what does all this say about this place? This may have been a refuge for Ranni, where she and her lost girls shared heretical thoughts, a place for her aunt to act as a ringleader. Renna the crone, her niece Ranni, and Chelona. But who is Chelona? While there are so many clues scattered around the Moonrise altar about Ranni, Renna, and Renala, this is Chelona's rise, and without any in-game item descriptions, that's all we get. One might say the trail goes cold. But how can we decrypt the story beyond this point? What even is a Chelona, and why is this place named after it? Well, the answer may not surprise you. Chelone comes from the Greek word for tortoise, and a Chelonia is an order of turtles in a zoological sense, an order or group united in cold sorcery. Ranni's hat mentions practitioners of heretical sorcery, meaning multiple cold witches, Renna and her 2 students, Ranni and Chelona. Also, Blide's cloak looks very similar to Renna's, and he may have gotten in on the fun. This is starting to explain the multiple chairs in the room, but the revelations get more revelatory when we dig up why we associate turtles with Chelone. Back to the commentaries written by that grammaton cleric from earlier, Servius. Servius's Chelone is a nymph, often associated with trees, but the Greek nymph may just mean young woman, bride, or young wife. Greek Chelone is transformed into a tortoise for refusing to attend the wedding of Zeus and Hera. We all know Zeus, thunder godwin and brother to Hera, Hera being a goddess who presides over weddings, and whose list of sacred animals includes a cuckoo, a bird I had never heard of until I played Elden Ring. Remember that Chelone's other window points right at the Church of Vows. If we assume the Greek Chelone is similar to the Elden Chalona, this tells a story that is consistent with the Moonrise altar. Chelona may have disapproved of a wedding to the point of revulsion, but whose marriage was it? Renala and Radigan? Possibly. Radigan uses lightning against us, but he isn't Renala's brother, and that leaves Chelona's aversion to the match a mystery. The wedding wasn't Radigan and Renala's. It was Ranni and Godwin's. A child of the cuckoo was set to marry her own brother. While the name of the nearby church, Manicelis, could rely on the Latin Celestia, meaning heavenly, it may also reference Scelus, meaning crime or evil deed. Celis, Scelus, that would give Chelona much stronger motivation for opposing the match and makes better use of both the thunder and the other Habsburgian aspects, a marriage neither Godwin nor Ranni wanted. But where was Renala? She was seduced by Radigan, Leal Hound and all that, and may have sanctioned the match. This is supported by the Dark Moon ring depicting a leaden full moon, symbolic of a cold oath. The ring is supposed to be given by lunar Princess Ranni to her consort. Ranni is an empyrean, meaning her consort would by rights earn the title of Lord. Renala wanted Ranni to marry, and may not have known Godwin was Ranni's half-brother. Ranni may not have known either. And I wonder if that tidbit was a part of Renna's secret tutelage. You better fear that dark moon, girl. I don't think Ranni wanted the marriage, as she discarded the palace key, leaving it locked in the grand library of Rea Lucaria with her mother, Renala. The Dark Moon ring continues. A warning is engraved within. Whoever thou mayest be, take not the ring from this place. The solitude beyond the night is better mine alone. I think she wanted to be alone. If we examine the Dark Moon ring, we notice a crack. What if Ranni dropped it? Or more appropriately, threw it against a wall in anger? Imagine her staring at the ring, a band meant to control her, dark thoughts swirling in her mind. Carving this warning might have been her first act of rebellion. Consider also the crone must have already been on the scene by this time. It may be clear why the crone was mentoring Ranni in secret to fear her dark moon. She was undermining Queen Renala. You might have a lot of questions by this point. Like, since everyone was immortal, why rush a little Ranni into marriage at all? And you still may not be convinced, but Rena was dead. She couldn't be the mastermind. And how does Ranni's empyrean status come into this? Also, Rykard? In order to fully understand all the motivations behind the Knight of Black Knives, we have to go over to the capital and explain what the two fingers were doing behind Marika's back. Over to Lanedell, there was trouble between the two fingers and Marika. The fact that they were choosing a new empyrean at all tells me everything I need to know. And they were replacing her. When speaking to Ranni and Noxtella, she confirms, "Let us speak of the past a while. I was once an empyrean. Of the demigods, only I, Mikola, and Melania could claim that title. Each of us was chosen by our own two fingers, as a candidate to succeed Queen Marika, to become the god of a coming age. If Marika is the god of the current age, any coming age threatens that power. This is much better motivation for me than her wanting to spread Deathroot, something she could have done at any time. The memory of death being something she went to great pains to seal away. The Fingers chose her replacement. Not Godwin, Moog, or Margot. They had too much of their father, and Rykard and Radon were too much their mother. Only Mikola, Melania, and for some reason, Ranni could replace Marika, and as a daughter of Radigan, Godwin was Ranni's brother, consistent with the myth of Chelona. Also, it's been noticed that even though Mikola and Melania are empyreans, they don't have shadows, meaning that, whether she wanted it that way or not, Ranni's resume was much closer to the Golden Manager's desk. In summary, Marika's motivation for the Knight of Black Knives may have less to do with her wanting to unseal death, and more to do with the betrayal by her priestly fingers. Godwin, why would Marika's own son threaten his mother's power? Why agree to a marriage planned by her enemies? Was he Tommen Baratheon from Game of Thrones? I don't think this is the case. And I don't think he's gay.
I'm so mad all I can do is dance.
It's been noticed that dragons are gendered, and may even carry gender in the name. Placidusax is the dragon lord whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time. Once his god was fled, the lord continued to await its return. Once his god. Does Sax mean boy? Lanciax is female. From her glaive we read that she is the sister of Fortisax. Sister. Sax meant girl. Until the DLC, a reasonable person could have assumed that Godwin was gay, as his mate, Fortisax, shares a suffix with the male dragon lord. And this reminds me of Laenor Velaryon, from the House of the Dragon. Only, famously, Laenor agrees to cooperate with a plot that would get him out of the match. Maybe Godwin did too. Maybe he was already in love with the dragon, and wanted no parts of this repellent marriage ritual. If he conspired to be a martyr of this plan, and fake his death, rather than act as Ranni's Lord Balenciaga, maybe it was in hopes of being reborn, either through the Erd Tree or Fia, his own deathbed companion. Fia Sax. Thanks, Jake. But to fool the Two Fingers, no fake stunt would do. Godwin would have needed to die a true death. But why make things so complicated? If Marika was God, why didn't she just put her foot down? DLC St. Trina hints that divinity is a prison, but even then, at the time of Ranni's choosing, Marika would have already been married to Renala, and as such would still be Radigan. How could Ranni have older brothers if Marika wasn't Radigan at this point? And if Marika equals Radigan was a secret, that would have meant long disappearances from the capital. Enough time for her various spidery fingers to hatch a plan. She didn't just invalidate the Two Fingers. She was a god in conflict with her own priests, similar to Hatshepsut, who ruled Egypt successfully, but would spend her life battling the priestly class using the arrangement of marriages. This is the style of class warfare that I believe Marika was engaged in against the Two Fingers. Hatshepsut used marriages as a means to stay in power. I believe Marika did the same. Two female gods, together with their powerful sons. This is where my theory starts to diverge from others that you may have heard, but try to factor in that as Marika was the one who sealed death away, what prevented her from just unsealing it at any moment?
I am your man forever.
I know.
Malekith would have obeyed her. Also, why play around with death at all when your own daughter has been chosen as your empyrean replacement? And it wasn't some faraway notion. Ranni was already chosen, had her own shadow, and was about to marry her own lord consort, a competing queen from within the Golden Order, one that, as Radigan, Marika couldn't deal with directly. So she set about her mischief. I believe the following is Marika's actual intent behind the Knight of Black Knives. Fool the Two Fingers by staging an assassination of Lord Godwin. This would prevent his indecent marriage to his juvenile sister, preventing Ranni from reluctantly ending Marika's golden age. Ranni steals death long ago, so it can be used on Godwin, in hopes he would die his full, destined death, but through Erdtree burial, he would be revived. Resurrected. With no consort, Ranni wouldn't be queen, and Marika would continue to live happily with Renala. There is a red wolf overlooking Chelona's rise, and while Malekith was Marika's to command, that was only so long as she went along with the Two Fingers. as baleful shadows are just another means of control. Any affront to the two fingers may have activated him. As a next-level threat, he had to be accounted for. And based on theories put together by lore theorists better than me, the gods are immortal because their bodies forgot their destined deaths. Malekith had the power to remind them. In short, avoid Anubis, save the princess, save the kingdom. It's just peak fantasy. Here are the roles of the plot. Renna and Ranni are the ringleaders of the Carian side. I know this because of who is in the ringleader's Everjail under Renna's spirit turtle. A mother-daughter pair of assassins, Alecto and Tish. Mother-daughter, but Snowy Renna is Ranni's aunt, right? And she's doing a whole lot for a dead woman. Going back to Greek mythology, Alecto is one of the Furies, from the underworld, who can pop up and dispense wrathful justice on what they consider moral offenses. Alecto and her sister Tisiphone, who must be the inspiration behind the Black Knife leader, Alecto and her daughter, Tish, possibly a nickname. Tish's spirit ashes read, Tish was one of the assassins who, on the night of the plot, imbued her black knife with the rune of death and slew Godwyn the Golden. She was the daughter of the Black Knife ringleader, Alecto, and was killed protecting her mother during their flight from the royal capital. The other Black Knives are arrested all around the map, but the ringleaders are found here, on the Moonrise Altar, hinting that Chelona's rise may have been their rendezvous point. Ranni and her aunt wouldn't have needed to confer with every knife, just their supervisor. When the blades returned, they were locked away, possibly by a furious Renala. It's possible Renna was mentoring Chelona, and Ranni ran into them and joined the gang. I also thought R'hllana could be Chelona's mother. R'hllana? Chelona? It has a ring, but R'hllana was 10 toes down on Mesmer, but she was barking up the wrong tree there.
She's the gay one.
In terms of acting ringleaders, I have Renna, Ranni, and possibly Chelona, considering this is her rise. Renna, who mentored Ranni to avoid the marriage, and Ranni, who stole death from Malekith.
I am the witch Ranni. I stole death long ago.
Also, why did little Ranni have to go steal death? All this may have started when Ranni was a kid, and she may have been older by this time, but even then, wasn't there a more experienced Snow Witch at the ready? We know that Rykard was involved from the fragment given to him by Ranni, so he could make the blasphemous claw, a sign of graduation on the part of Ranni. She's gone from heresy of the cold to full-on blasphemy. It reads, a slab of rock engraved with traces of the rune of death can deflect the power of the black blade. On the night of the dire plot, Ranni rewarded Praetor Rykard with these traces. Should the coming trespass one day transpire, they would serve as a last resort foil, allowing Rykard to challenge Malekith, the Black Blade. Rykard was involved, likely in allowing the assassins into Leyndell. But with cloaks that fool the eye, maybe they need all that. Marika was Radigan, and couldn't just leave the door open. But Rykard could, and Ranni was thankful. Claws of death and blasphemy. Sounds so nefarious. But isn't this what you'd expect from her older brother? Maybe our Richard just really loved blasphemy, but Ranni was Rykard's kid sister, and her being married off against her wishes would have motivated him to turn against the Erdtree. It's been well discussed that a praetor is a Roman magistrate, similar to judges and generals. A Praetorian guard was a personal bodyguard to the emperor. Either way, Rykard would have been a useful ally to the assassins. Also, I'm maintaining that Marika was not in the capital at the time, and Rykard was her man on the inside. Godwyn just had to not kill the assassins when they got there. Sounds easy enough, but I believe his power is emphasized because the plan may have required his permission. It's possible that even with those cloaks, he may have painted the town red with those black knives. But while he was mighty enough to slay a dragon slew his heart. One of many possible reasons he wouldn't have wanted to go along with this backwoods marriage. Curse mark of death, carved into the discarded flesh of Ranni the Witch, also known as the half-wheel wound of the centipede. This mark was carved at the moment of death of the first demigod, and should have taken the shape of a circle. However, 2 demigods perished at the same time, breaking the curse into 2 half-wheels. Should have formed a circle. Should have died a true death. The finger reader calls him a martyr to destined death. Maybe as a martyr, he was killed for what he believed in. Love. Maybe as a martyr, he gave his own life. A willing participant. All Godwyn had to do is die and be reborn, which was the fashion at the time. I think Godwyn, his mother's lord and savior, made a sacrifice of himself. One loose thread is Marika. What was she doing? Well, quite a lot, but we'll get into that after the Night of Black Knives, as it is by far my wildest theory. With the puppets in place, the knives ride in, and it doesn't go well. Godwyn gets killed, but, for real, but let's talk about Malekith and the betrayal. I think the betrayal of Malekith references the use of the blasphemous claw during the night. Multiple traces, we read again. Rewarded Praetor Rykard with these traces. In a wild moonshot theory, Tisha's item description hints at their use. Put simply, I believe the assassins had their own claws, as a contingent for Malekith, as they were much more likely to encounter him than Rykard, and would have used them in an emergency like Alecto watching her own daughter get killed. Item descriptions might invalidate, but I believe Tish was killed by Malekith, as the knives may have been too skilled for anyone else. And surely Tisha's own mother would have tried anything to save her. Consider what may have been the moment of Tisha's death. Whatever killed her gave her mother time to collect her ashes. Maybe Malekith was surprised or stunned. The plan should have gone off without a hitch. But of course, something went terribly wrong. Her son, her Romeo, was poisoned. The problem with the plan was Ranni, or should I say, the problem with the plan was that they were ultimately upholding the current order, the same order that owned Ranni, and could try to make her their plaything at any point in the future. Ranni, inevitable doll of the two fingers. Ranni's part. Remember the spirit turtles? Another interpretation of them is that they're all Ranni, and the plan was hers from start to finish. After agreeing to help Rajier, we can accuse Ranni of being behind the plot.
I see. Quite the sleuth, aren't we? Indeed, I am the witch Ranni. I stole a fragment of the Rune of Death, and used it to forge the god-slaying black knives through fearsome rite. I did it all.
Simple, right? Roger says it, Ranni says it. Ranni must be our ringleader.
You know, you're making a lot of sense.
And Marika's personal assassins betrayed her by taking a job from their boss's niece to kill Marika's own son. But Marika, who loved life, wanted him dead, wanted death unsealed, so she could end her own order that was already ending. But then why'd Ranni lock up Alecto? Oh, but the double betrayal.
You're not making sense anymore!
Ranni didn't act alone. How could she and Godwin's finger reader know what the curse mark was supposed to do? And they expected the full mark of destined death, a magic that was sealed before Ranni was even born. Whoever taught Ranni how to use destined death was probably the real ringleader, and was working out of both Lanedale and the Moonrise Plateau. When I look at the primal glintstone, it asks this question: my apprentice, do you think it distasteful? Maybe Ranni is the apprentice, and like Juliet, pierced her heart with a dagger. What could be the real-life inspiration for this, aside from Shakespeare? Let's look at the assassination of Servius Tullius. Wikipedia tells us after he arranged marriages for his daughters, the youngest pair conspired to kill the rest of them. Brother murdered brother, sister murdered sister, with Tullius himself being stabbed by assassins. This mix of sororicide, fratricide, patricide, and regicide was seen as unholy in the extreme. Since Radigan rules over a post-shattering world, full of suffering and neglect, and Marika was known for her blessings, I would say Marika might have been the last of the benevolent kings, in intent if not impact. I'm convinced she was Radigan at this time, and was still in Liurnia. Marika, as Radigan, may have raced to the capital after the plan failed, realizing that she can't stay away any longer. Radigan discarded Renala's greatsword to hide it, to hide where they had been this entire time. Remember that Radigan equals Marika was a secret that would have been revealed if he showed up with a sword she could have only been given as a wedding gift from a famous Carian, Queen Renala. Radigan covered it in gold and hid it away. Maybe the Leonin we find wielding it is protecting it, as Red Lions may refer back to Radigan. Back in the capital, as herself, Marika checks on her son, but as the plan was for him to be revived, he was already buried in the roots of the Erd Tree, infecting it. The release of death was an accident. Despite the plan being an attempt to preserve her order, this was an abysmal failure, corrupting everything Marika had done so much to build. Marika would have known the Carian faction betrayed the Lanedale side. The knives thought they had the entire curse mark, and carried out their role, paying a heavy price. That's why Alecto isn't free, and why the assassins kill Ranni's gang when they find them. Revenge. Ranni really did love them, even if she knew their deaths were destined. Points Ranni. And while we are defending Ranni, what about her stepmother, Renala, a powerful woman who crumbled without the love of her man? Right. Renala's poor mental state is another smokescreen. In actuality, with her daughter dead, Renala realized what she'd almost done to Ranni, that her daughter killed herself and it was partly her fault. That's why she cradles the egg. Ranni's amber egg. But more on that later. Godwin Christ is no longer the prince of the sun tree. He's been sacrificed, eclipsed, and now is the Prince of Death, languishing in the underworld until he rises again. Up until the DLC, I thought homie was gay, tricked by a naming convention. I'll say again, tricked by a naming convention that broke down in one key place. Florisax, a she-dragon.
Lord, Placidusax, tonight, like every night, my solace is yours.
Clearly female-coded, and with her name confirmed by her spirit ash, Florisax is a woman, despite sharing sax in common with Placidusax. The naming convention hid a secret character, Fortisax's human form, Fiasax, according to Jake the Mimic, Lord Detective Extraordinaire. But I like to call her Fia Magdalene. Both Jesus and Godwin give their lives on their parents' order. In the Bible, Jesus is sealed in a tomb, not in the roots of a tree, but a similar dark place, where he is visited by the women from his life. Mary, his mother, but also Lady Magdalene, a working girl who was friends with the big man. Consider that, after Godwin the Golden became the Prince of Death, the ancient dragon fought long and hard against the death within its companion. Alas, victory was never achieved, and its only reward was corruption. It's darkly romantic, so romantic that it reminds me of Arwen, giving up her immortality for Aragorn, an immortal woman who would have been at the deathbed of her champion, her companion, no longer immortal, cursed to wander the lands outside of the Golden Order. Fia's hood of black cloth that covers the whole head, worn by Fia, the deathbed companion, on her journey after being exiled from her home of the immortal dragons. Fortisax's heart tells us about the transformation process. The change cannot be undone until death. Maybe there is no changing back. Fia gave up her dragon form for Godwin, maybe believing that he would be revived. And we have evidence that she's pissed. The weathered dagger tells us, dagger received from Fia, the deathbed companion. She wishes for it to be returned to its rightful owner. It was once a special weapon of silver and gold intertwined, but is now worn down and marred by a black gash. Redditor Wonderbread impressively noticed that the weathered dagger is of a set with the inseparable sword, link in description. But there is the gash, likely a rune of death, and if we examine the corpse of the Dhampir, we find Deathroot. I don't know if Fia was involved in the plot. If she was, she would have been terrified, asked to wait for her lover to be reincarnated after receiving the curse mark seal, looking for someone to blame when things went wrong, and using a knife engraved with death, like the Golden House of Marika and the Silver of the Moon. In their culpability, we have gold and silver intertwined. Rykard and Malekith. After the night, Rykard becomes the Lord of Blasphemy. I believe he flees the capital because of the betrayal of Malekith. Stealing death might be the betrayal Malekith talks about, but I'm not sure. Also, Ranni admits she stole death. Malekith's remembrance. Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away death and death. Even then, she betrayed him. Rykard's blasphemous claw is made with a trace of death and death. She betrayed Malekith by letting her knives use death on him. Look at Malekith after the claw. Surprised, stunned. Malekith would have known what this power was, and his reaction may mirror his response the first time, possibly in his fight with the Black Knives, when he slew Tish. Both Rykard and Malekith left the capital, disillusioned by the Golden Order. Rykard in defense of his sister, Malekith blaming himself and gathering Deathroot to make up for his failure. As fun as it is to imagine Malekith mixing it up with the Electo gang, it might be much simpler. Since he's gathering Deathroot, it might be as simple as his sin was allowing it to be released in the first place, considering he may have internalized that soul need business. Either way, Ranni stole death, but it's explicitly stated as Marika's betrayal. Hold on to that. Mikola wanted Godwin reborn, but his prayers would go unanswered. Godwin Montague was dead. Ranni Capulet was dead. And with this twisted Romeo and Juliet story ended, things were far worse than Marika intended, and they would never be the same again. Sellen, Seluvis, and Chelona. After the plot, Electo barely makes it back to the Rise, only to be imprisoned by Renala. Ranni was already dead. Chelona, involved or not, was left alone with the wrong people. Seluvis and Sellen. Seluvis helps Ranni with her dull body, but why was there an even more secret chamber? Was this secret from Ranni? Servius, the Grammaton, was interested in womanhood, and wrote about Chelone, the Greek nymph. As a Roman, his name suggests he was owned. The Roman Servius means to serve, and since names are given rather young, it's like the Roman equivalent of naming your daughter Roomba. Servius, Seluvis, meaning Pitia, despite being a doctor, may have been an unpaid helper for no money. Consider that Ranni must have trusted each of her comrades enough to embark on the dark path with them, likely because she grew up with them, Blide, Iji, and Pitia, who may have also known Chelona. Also, Seluvis is rude, almost like he was bullied, or made aware of his low standing from a young age, and having not healed, he only understands strength in the limited, infantile way it was used on him. He calls us provincial, which is telling. As a tarnished, I don't know where the provinces are, let alone give one golden turd if that's where I'm from. But Pidia does.
Your offishness knows no bounds. Fine and well. You tricked Nepheli and had her drink the potion. I believe that makes you my accomplice. You yearn for a puppet of your own, hmm? Well, normally one of your stature would never be allowed.
He thinks he can use status as a blade, assuming it will cut us because it drew blood from him, the pitiful little finger of this world, a lowborn who was never equal to the princesses he grew up with, Chelona and Ranni. And we know he at least desired Ranni. Amber, draught, small flask received from Preceptor Selvus containing a gleaming amber draught for use in a scheme, and give it to Ranni and ensure she drinks it. As Chelona and Ranni would have outranked Pidia in a similar way, he may have had similar feelings for her as well, and Pidia has a general hatred for strong women. Dolores, a round table tarnish from before our time, fell victim to him as well. Her ashes read, spirit of a handsome archer who dressed in the style of a man, called the Silent Hunter by some. She fires St. Trina's arrows from her short bow. Dolores once belonged to the Round Table Hold, where she was both a critic and a friend of Gideon the All-Knowing. It was because of her that he and Selvus went their separate ways. Handsome, bold, quarrelsome, Dolores defied gendered expectations, standing in her power, and Selvus hated it, arresting her in a doll's body. While this is mostly known, what may be less common knowledge is that Selvus helped Sellen steal Chelona's body. Pidia may be a reference to Phidias, a Greek sculptor who carved a body for Aphrodite, posed with her foot on a turtle. In the article, Why Does Aphrodite Have Her Foot on That Turtle?, Carol Dougherty highlights the mythological connection between women and turtles, and how the shell is a symbol of their place in the home. Aphrodite in Phidias' sculpture is stepping on a turtle, arresting its kinetic potential, earning Phidias a place as Pythia, the lowest of the Albinaurics. While Ranni is a god, Aphrodite in this context is more likely Sellen. Let me explain. The Graven Witch. Much of the mystery here is already solved, so I'll cover it quickly. Sellen is old as sin, an ancient body snatcher that is connected to the primordial. She uses the primordial glintstone to pass her soul from body to body, and with our help, ends up in the body of Chelona. If this doll was Pidia's childhood friend, that would count as a tragic crime, which might be why Sellen's doll is so thoroughly hidden even from Ranni, who would have recognized her. In Ranni's coldness, she likely always knew, sending the guards to take out the trash when she was finished with him.
Thank you. You've helped me fill a new body once again.
Also, what would Sellen have wanted from a new body? Something similar to her last body, only younger. A younger Carian. Remember Chelona, the inspiration for Chelona? Chelona was a young nymph who was turned into a turtle. Aphrodite was standing on a wise beast. Turtles in Elden Ring are associated with stamina, vigor, meaning Chelona was young and full of vigor. As we near the end of Sellen's questline, she comments on her newly acquired drip, cryptically confirming her horrible deed.
Helped me fill a new body once again, and it's truly a gem. Young and full of vigor, a snug fit for my primal glintstone. Young and full of vigor, young and full of vigor.
Young and full of vigor. Sellen snatched her body, leaving Chelona trapped in a shell. Ranni's worst fear was being controlled. This is why Sellen is hunted by Gerend, an agent of Renala. Ringleader and the Cuckoo. How can Renna be the ringleader and be dead? Say it with me. Marika is Renna. But before you confiscate my grapes, what even is a cuckoo? We already know it's a bird that sneaks its eggs into the nests of others. The new parents are none the wiser, raising the bird as their own. But sometimes, the adopted cuckoo will even push the true-born children out of the nest. The Carian house of Queen Renala and her knights are heavily associated with the bird, but I've never understood the significance. Renala isn't the cuckoo, she's the cuckold. And not just because Radigan left her for her rival. We go back to Wikipedia to read that a cuckold is also a parent that doesn't realize their child isn't their offspring. Ranni isn't Renala's daughter. She's Radigan's, but not Renala's. As an empyrean, she is the child of a single god. Remembrance of the rock goddess. Mikola and Melania are both the children of a single god, and as such, they are both empyreans, but suffered afflictions. The "but suffered afflictions" tells me that wasn't part of the bargain. Consider this sentence. I bought a new plane, but it was filled with snakes. The snakes weren't part of the bargain. The afflictions were a detraction from their empyrean status, possibly a contributing reason they were not chosen to be God, an indication they hadn't melded harmoniously with their great rune. From the DLC, we see the impossible series of rituals that is needed to create an empyrean. After the veiling, the two fingers only had Marika, and any copies she may have made of herself, copies she would have wanted to keep hidden or they could be used against her, copies that she hid using a naming convention.
Let us speak of the past a while. I was once an empyrean, of the demigods. Only I, Mikola, and Melania could claim that title. Each of us was chosen by our own two fingers, as a candidate to succeed Queen Marika, to become the new god of the coming age.
Only I, Mikola, and Melania, copies of Marika, which is why, as a boy, Mikola is feminine, which is why he, his Saint Trina form, Ranni, and Melina all look the same, clones of the god vessel. Her doll body was modeled after her mentor, but she looks just like Melina. How could the sculptor have been going for an old woman, but spent so much time adding arms that he forgot the face, but in a way that he accidentally made it look like Melina and Saint Trina? 4 arms might just be the way Carians make dolls, but the face is Renna, meaning the face is Marika. First, let's look at the Black Knives. In Liurnia, they are imprisoned, but in Lanedale, they guard the bedchamber, free. This tells me that Marika was their real boss. So how could Renna, a Carian burnout from the wilds of nowhere, be able to hire them? This may just be headcanon, but I have to imagine that hiring the Knives was harder than just blowing a fistful of dollars into the wind and making a wish. The personal assassins of God probably don't take outside client work, making it more likely that these were Marika's knives the entire time, serving her as she disguised herself as Renna. Also, I can't imagine Ranni or Chelona would have cooperated with Marika. Marika may have been Radigan at the time, hinted only vaguely by the Red Wolf overlooking Chelona's rise. To Ranni's group, Marika was the opposition. They would not have taken her orders or may not have even told her what they were doing. Yiji was so afraid he wore a tinfoil hat, but they listened to Renna. This puts Marika behind both the gold and silver sides of the Black Knife plot, and explains why the Knives hunt Ranni's gang at the end of Ranni's quest. Probably why Ranni never released Electo, even after Renala's sabbatical. Ranni was supposed to give them the full death. They haven't forgiven her. Marika accomplished this using the Mimic's Veil. When Godric was hounded from Lanedale, the royal capital, this was one of a multitude of treasures he took with him, also known as Marika's Mischief. This item allows Marika to look like anything she wants, even Ranni's Snow Witch mentor. Also, consider the Grace. It's been noticed by others that in Ranni's quest, after we give her the Fingerslayer blade, she gives us access to Renna's Rise, at the top of which we find the Snow Witch set. This hurts my brain with its brilliance. The genius of the observation is the curious detail that the Grace points us to Renna's tower. Ranni, powerful as she is, doesn't control Grace. Marika does. With so many sites of Grace present in the area, why does this one appear, if not to point us to the truth of what Marika really did that night and up unto? This could be another reason why Renna didn't announce herself to her sister. It wasn't her sister. Renala may have always missed Renna, and mischief or not, would have spotted Marika as a fake by her mannerisms, possibly her husband's mannerisms. Anastasia would have been outed as a fake. And of the Carian bird, Renala is the bird that sits on her nest, doting on a winged parasite, waiting on it to slay her natural-born children. If the amber drought was for Ranni, the amber egg may have been too, the golden egg Marika snuck into her nest. The Sweetings support my theory. Ranni's corpse has red hair. These have black, the same as Renala's. Ranni was a red-headed stepchild. Renala's story is characterized by loss, first of her sister, then her husband and her daughter at the same time. Racked by guilt, she forsook everything, hoping to get Ranni back out of the egg, and not understanding why it wasn't working, not knowing that Ranni wasn't her daughter. Do you need more? Consider the Jellyfish sisters, Aurelia and Arielette. If Aurelia is Renna and Arielette is Renala, then the Spirit Jelly quest tells an even sadder story. Renala waited for her older sister, but she didn't come back. The nearby grave reads, "Here lies Aurelia and Arielette, who never saw the stars." This may not be concrete, but it suggests that they never met after Renna left home. Consider who we find Aurelia's spirit with, Roderica. But why would a character with so many similarities to Marika have Renna's spirit jelly? At the very least, this hints at a connection between Renna and Marika. But because our spirit summons remember past battles, Marika may have had access to Renna's memories. Despite the fact that Renna was back and sneaking around her sister's own estate, Renna didn't come back for her. I believe this is the secret behind the jellyfish quest. Told through Roderika's mirrored quest line, Marika releases Renna's spirit so she can journey among the stars, possibly thankful for her service. The Brood. More evidence lies in how consistent this is with Marika's children. Godwin wasn't given a rune, but every demigod who did was cursed by it, except Ranni. Ranni is the only demigod who had a great rune, was selected, but like Godwin, had no malady. Some call Ranni cold-hearted, but that may have more to do with the two fingers, who took warmth and love from her to make blood. Marika, who was already practiced at hiding her children, snuck her egg in the nest of another bird, hoping that she would be raised in loving finery by her real parents in secret, meaning Rennala plus Radigan equals Ranni is really Marika plus Marika equals Ranni, born of a single god. Like the Zamore, Queen Rennala is a long-lived, long-lost Numen, the perfect stepmother for Marika's Numen daughter. I don't think Marika knew Ranni would kick her brothers out of the nest, Godwin and Radahn, two men that, although well-meaning, came dangerously close to doing the thing you cannot do in the lands between, control Ranni's fate. When the Fingers found Ranni in spite of this, and planned for her marriage to Godwin, Marika had to act to protect her daughter and save her kingdom. It's clear now why she couldn't reveal her plan against the Two Fingers. Marika wanted to save her family from the Two Fingers by faking her son's death, preventing a marriage between her direct children. Godwin would have been reborn, although reunited with Fia, the Fingers would have tried to marry him again. Ranni, the inevitable doll, wanted freedom, something Marika's plan couldn't provide in the long run. It's possible that the Fingers are so alien that they don't care that Ranni and Godwin were brother and sister. Maybe they didn't know, but ruined by it all, Marika finally arrived at the only real option when faced with a system so controlling and oppressive. She shattered the ring, burned it down. This has been my discussion of Chelona and the motivation behind the Knight of Black Knives. Thank you for listening.